Beautiful souls, light of love, universal wisdom, shine your love on us. Beautiful souls, unity in love, spirit and angels watching over us. Hello, welcome. Welcome to Mystic Mindfulness with Christine. My name is Christine. Thank you for joining me. Let's see. This is a place of light, love, and intuitive inspiration. And I've been doing some contemplation. I've really been thinking a little more deeply. I'm still processing through the spiritual things that the religious beliefs that I had. I still process through that. And I will say that it's been, oh man, I don't know how many years now. It's probably been 3 years since I became agnostic, and it was a journey since about 2008 that I was really seriously just kind of digging through Bible verses, trying to figure things out, and reading books. It might have been 2013 that actually it was more like 2013 that I was reading books like that, trying to find truth and seek it out. And it's a painful process. It's a journey when you have believed so deeply in something your whole life, just to realize that what you thought you knew isn't really truth at all. So my whole point in this video is to dive a little bit deeper into the journey that I've had, in hopes to either help people along the way who are also going through what I've gone through. I can't be the only one. Maybe we can travel this road together. And also in hopes to prevent things like this for young kids from happening to them, because it is very damaging. I was writing in my journal, and so I'm going to be reading out of my journal here occasionally, for the most part, actually. So bear with me while I read to you. But here's really where it's at. So because my channel is called Mystic Mindfulness with Christine, the mindfulness today is going to be about theological reasoning and truth, personal truth versus universal truth, and the damaging effects that religion can have. So I've just finished a liberal arts class in a college course, and I learned about bias and lenses and views, and the importance of having an open mind when doing scientific research, how preconceived ideas can affect outcome, and this is bias. So teaching the Bible or a religion as a universal truth, and universal truth is a truth that is scientifically proven and everybody would pretty much believe it. Like an example of this is there are stars in the night sky. We have planets. Those are things that, people would say, yeah, those are universal truths. So looking at the Bible, let's consider the plight of myself or any young, impressionable child with a pliable, absorbent cognition. Imagine yourself 3 years of age. Your daddy, whom you adore, reads his Bible often. Now, my dad had this huge, big, fat King James Version Bible, and my family was very involved in the church. So you would read his Bible, and I'm sure it was maybe to teach a Bible study class or something. I'm sure that's why he was reading. And you recognize this at the age of 3, a young age, that this must be an important thing to do, otherwise he wouldn't be doing this. So then, jumping forward to my age of 11, if you haven't seen my first video, you might want to see that, because I'm going to recap here some on it, but that might be beneficial. So imagine at the age of 11, you're reading a King James Bible for the first time. Now, the King James Bible is like reading a Old English Shakespeare play, which can be very complicated to read if you're not familiar with reading Old English. So not only is it difficult to read, but it's dull and dry and boring, like an overcooked piece of roast beef. Just ugh. And you wonder why anybody would waste their time reading the Bible. What is in this that anybody desires to read? So I went to my mom and I asked her why anybody's, reading this book, and how come I'm not getting anything out of it. And she asked me to go to my room and ask the Holy Spirit to reveal the words within the book, which I did. And within minutes, if not seconds, I was reading the Bible again. And the words were fresh and new and inspiring and fascinating. So good to read. I was excited about this. And the words moved me so much in love. I felt this deep love for the first time. Now, I struggle with this because I go, this is a real personal experience that I have had, but I also know scientifically that the brain is very powerful, and your thoughts and what you think affect how you feel. And so I wonder, okay, well, is this a brain thing? Is this a bias on my end? Because first of all, I already know that the Bible is truth because I see, or it's maybe not truth. I don't know if I knew that it was truth for me, but I knew that it was important. I knew that it was an important book. So I had a bias there. And I do know that the brain is a very amazing, powerful thing. So I questioned this experience of mine, but I know that for me it was real, but that doesn't mean that my brain didn't create it in some way, okay? Now, looking at the Bible and what it tells us to have faith like a little child. If you're going to enter the kingdom of heaven, you have to accept it like a little child. And little children are very gullible and naive, and they have a lot of faith. And they're very loving. And if there's a verse in Romans that says, oh man, it just left me. It's something about love and belief. So those who believe are very loving people. That's what that it says. I'll put it in some notes later. But yeah, it's those who have faith also have a lot of love, because you can't. They're very loving people. Okay, anyway. So we have to have faith like a little child. That's Matthew 18:2-5, which I did. I was a young child. I was gullible and I was naive, and I was willing to accept what I read. So Jesus says that he is the truth in John 14:6. And I will read that for you. So here's my Bible. Now we'll read that for you. Jesus said to him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Okay, so Jesus right there is claiming to be the truth. And then Jesus says his words are truth, and that's John 17:17. And I will read that to you. So this is a point where Jesus is praying for his disciples right before he's going to be crucified. And he's praying to God, and this is one of the things that he asks for. He asks the Father, sanctify them by your truth. Your word is truth. So his word is truth. In John 1:1-6, and I'll read that to you. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Okay, so we know that God is the Word, because these are the words of God, right? That's what we all believe. These are the words of God. And I'm saying we all believe this, meaning that anybody who is a religious believer believes this. Not necessarily you don't have to believe this. Okay, so then moving to John 1:14, it says, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory as the only begotten Father, full of grace and truth. So John 1:14 is referring to Jesus, because Jesus became flesh and dwelt among us. And if you're not familiar with the concept of the Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, they are all three in one, which is what that would mean. And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us as Jesus being born into human form, and being the Word. Yes, so we know that Jesus is the truth. We know that his words are truth, and he is the words, and he in flesh, right? So childlike faith I had, trust I did, naive I was. And I wonder, for most people who are religious and go to church, people I went to church with, if most of them read their Bible in a different way than I did. I'm not sure. Maybe they read their Bible without a depth of trust. Like when you meet someone for the first time, you're more cautious about it. You're not just jumping right in going, hey, I'm, be my best friend. They're more reserved and more cautious. Maybe they don't believe everything that's written in the Bible. I'm not sure how other people have digested it, but that's how I digested it. I digested it with full-on faith. And yeah, I jumped in headlong with complete confidence of trust, nothing wavering. So when the Bible claims to be God's own words, written and inspired, claims to be God and Jesus, the ultimate truth, the ultimate universal truth, and you place your whole purpose and decisions and choices and practices and beliefs in a book you know will guide you throughout your life and guide you into the truth, to one day discover that the very words are laced with contradictions, false advertising, because the Gospels are not written by first-hand accounts from eyewitnesses as they so claim. Passages have been added, translations are not accurate, things are not what they seem. When the walls come tumbling down, what remains? A great myth? A history book of stories from third-party accounts that really aren't even accurate history? Maybe it was inspired. Like the Bible also says that the words that were inspired, the Holy Spirit inspired men to write the book. And maybe they were inspired, but written by men with biased views of mucked up lenses based on skewed experiences and primitive social cultures of their time. The Bible talks about, and not just talks about it, it's not just a story. I mean, women are not allowed to wear pants or jewelry or braid their hair. And we didn't follow that belief because, you know, we were told in church, well, that was a cultural thing for that time. So, you know, they can kind of cherry pick things and go, well, that's not really meant for us because that was back then and it doesn't, you know, relate or it's not relevant. But there are other things where children and women, like women are not allowed to speak in church, and people are still following those beliefs. Elders and leaders in churches are like, no, you can't be a pastor, you can't preach in church, you can't teach men. Children are told to obey their parents and the Lord, for this is right and honoring. Well, what if that child is being abused? Are they still required to be obedient? Because some parents do say that I'm your parent, you have to obey me, regardless of whether or not it's for the health and wealth of the child. Slaves, women, and children were possessions like animals without free will. And that is what the Bible teaches. And it also teaches equality, which can be confusing because that's a contradiction. And I can't explain how this is to be if the Bible is the universal truth. If it's universal truth, there shouldn't be any contradictions. It shouldn't be confusing. However, if it is a book written by men, maybe inspired by God, and it's written from their own personal bias and skewed ideas of their primitive culture, then it would make it a little bit more easy to explain. But then it wouldn't be considered universal truth, and you would have to be like, okay, well, this isn't really universal truth. It's a concept or an idea. So again, it just takes me back to the very foundation of, okay, this can't be universal truth like it teaches that it is. The interesting thing too, and somewhat embarrassing on my part, is that I have had theological discussions with many different Western religions. I used to invite the people who would come from different religions that would, you know, knock on my door. I loved having them in my house. I really enjoyed it. And we would have discussions. And they were always very nice, pleasant conversations. I never argued. There's no point in arguing. I'm not that type of person anyway. Like I said, I am a Libra, so I like harmony. I don't like arguing. But it is very fascinating and complicated to reason a concept or an idea not knowing a bias that somebody else has. So when you're discussing the Bible, it's very important to know the lens or the view that the other party is looking through, because we can read the same Bible verses but see it completely differently based upon our bias. So when you break down that bias, it's easier to unravel it. And my whole purpose in this was, this is part of the embarrassing part of it. My thoughts were that everybody needed to be saved, and it was my responsibility to save them. And so if I could show them where their verses or how they were, you know, reading their Bible was incorrect, their bias was incorrect, and I could prove that through the Vine's expository Greek and Hebrew meaning of words, and I did. I'd open up the Vines and I'd, you know, show them how this is not accurate the way you're reading it. But it's important to know a bias in order to understand where somebody's coming from. And this does come into universal truth here. I'm still on this topic. It makes it a lot easier to unravel it for them. And one thing I've discovered with much frustration is the circular reasoning that so many religious believers do when defending their truth. And I did it. I did it a lot. An example of circular reasoning with a biased view is saying something like this. You walk up to your friend, or your friend walks up to you and says, man, Sally's really smart. And you don't know who Sally is, okay? You just know your friend here that's standing there. And you're like, oh, why is she, how do you know she's smart? She told me. Oh, well, how do you know? Well, on July 16th, she told me. Okay, I think you're understanding the concept and the idea here. They just keep repeating the same claim over and over, but in different ways. And Christians throw out Bible verses when defending their truth, but quoting verses doesn't make it truth. If you want to contend it's truth, that the Bible is truth, there has to be facts proven by science and history to back its claim. And the claim is that it's the universal truth. That's the claim. So there has to be science and history to back it in order to prove that. And if you don't have it, then it's not universal truth. The Bible is laced with some truth, possibly laced with some truth, but any good book, any good, decent book is laced with some truth. I mean, that's why you have movies that are so engaging and so profoundly moving, is because there is truth in it. And you can go, wow, I really can identify, relate to that. Or reading a book and it's really hard to put down because, you know, it mirrors life in some way. And when you mirror life in some way, there is some truth in that. If I don't know Sally, then she herself and what she says isn't a credible source. If she is smart, let's see some credible, reliable sources. And credible, reliable sources would be her grades, her test scores, or a secondary reliable source, which would be her teachers. You know, that would be credible. Teaching any young, impressionable child that religion is truth can have long-term damaging effects that can take years to process through. A personal truth, if we taught religion as if it were a personal truth and not a universal truth, it would be different. A personal truth is, you can't teach it or demand others to believe it like it is truth, because it's personal to you. You can talk about it, you can discuss it, you can reason with it, which is very fun. I love doing that. But it's a truth that resonates with you. A personal truth is one that resonates with you and your intuition, which is fine. That's just personal to you. But when you're taught as a young child that this is truth, and your entire life concepts, views, focus, your social structure, your daily life practices are absolute truths, it can leave you reeling with confusion and depression when that foundation comes tumbling down, when it falls apart. And I ended up with a term, spiritual envy, after uncovering facts about the Bible. And I didn't choose to know these facts. I was searching and seeking answers, but I always believed that the Bible would stand on its own and that those truths would be apparent. I wasn't concerned to look deeper and dig deeper and ask more and more questions, because I knew for a fact that the Bible could prove itself. So I didn't choose to know what I found out, and I couldn't unknow what I found out. I couldn't unknow them. It was like waking up every day from a terrific dream. Not a bad dream. It's like you go to sleep and you have these great dreams, and you wake up into a world filled with terror, and you just want to go back to sleep. That's how I felt. I just want to go back to sleep. I envied people who could pray with certainty, who went to church without getting upset by the lies being told, who weren't afraid because they knew God would heal them or answer a prayer for them. When lies are exposed to someone like me, I wanted to go back, like a child being born into this world. They can't re-enter their mother's womb as much as they might like to. That's how I felt. That's an analogy of how I felt. This wasn't a deliberate choice that I had made. I didn't wake up one day and decide, oh, agnostic is a really exciting term, a cool word. That's what I'm going to be. That wasn't what happened for me. It was something that happened to me because of my deep research. Over time, truths were revealed and questions weren't getting answered. Instead, questions unveiled contradictions and half-truths and full-on lies. And this is where my personal truths become my mystic and spiritual foundation. It's not a religion. It's not a full-on belief. I find my personal experiences to be as joyous and fun as a good hike in the wilderness, or near some falls, or going to a park, or swinging on a swing, or going out and gardening, being around plants and animals. I find it to be as enjoyable as that. And do I believe some of it? Sure I do. I don't teach it as a universal truth, but it's personal to me. And it is a personal truth of mine because I've experienced things. And those experiences, in my next videos, I would like to get into their intuitive experiences and paranormal things that I've experienced, and not just me, but other people in my families have witnessed as well. And when you look at those types of situations and circumstances, it kind of makes you scratch your head about spirituality in general. And when you have more than one person, more than two people, experiencing similar things at different times, or even at the same time, you're like, okay, well, how do you explain that? So I'm going to be getting into that, but I would like to close this up with a poem that I wrote for those of you who are on this journey with me. Here's my poem to you. Your broken heart, it beckons me. I see you and you see me, a reflection of imagery, a timeless mirror reflecting we. In healing, we two are one. A unified whole, two broken souls. When all alone, we mend, we heal, we feel. I love you. Thank you for joining me.